expectation around the press conference that he would make clear whether or not he intends on running for the US presidency. At this stage, there's been no change. ABC News will have details for you a little bit later on. But let's go back to the story at hand. My guest, Dr. Lars Schernikau, says Australia is lucky. We are sun-rich. However, he is concerned that the mathematics of the renewable energy transition don't add up. He says it's a real possibility that if we face demand management, as it's called, load shedding or brownouts is another euphemism, as we transition to renewables, as is starting to happen in Germany today. I managed to capture Lars Schernikau before he hopped on a plane in Brisbane last night. So, Lars, just explain to me, first of all, you are sceptical about whether Germany is going to be able to make the clean energy transition on its current plan. Tell me why. What doesn't add up for you?
Well, first of all, we have to be very careful using the term clean energy. There is no clean energy. There's different kinds of energy with different kinds of impact on the environment. Every energy form has an impact on the environment. And the transition, the so-called transition, is a transition to wind and solar plus hydrogen. That's largely more or less what it's based on. And the problem is that the wind and solar have fundamental energy economic problems that cause the high costs everybody's talking about and that cause the reliability issues.
So the reliability issues are what? That the wind doesn't blow all the time, the sun doesn't shine all the time, but why can't you have backups like hydrogen power, hydrogen, natural gas, or wave or pumped hydro, as Queensland is looking at here? Why isn't that a backup or a reserve?
So yes. So first you have to understand that wind and solar, let's start with solar. It's simplest because Australia is very solar-rich, sun-rich, right? You're very lucky in that sense, much luckier than Germany is. So if you look at solar, first of all, you have to build these solar panels, which last, and today the modern solar panels last 12, 15 years. They don't last 25 years anymore. Where are they produced? In China. With what? With coal, electricity, and heat. With what chemical basis? Carbon. Where does the carbon come from? From coal and from petcoke and from wood. You see, you have to look at the physical basis for these so-called clean systems. What are they built from and with what energy they're built from. And then you put them on, you plaster large areas of land, you have an environmental impact on the land as well. You actually increase the temperature by covering large areas of land with solar panels. But then you have to overbuild, hugely overbuild, because you have to build so much, not only to have electricity available during the day, you have to overbuild to have it also at night, and then you have to overbuild to charge the storage. Where does that come from? Right? You have to overbuild multiple times. Then on top of that, you have to build short duration energy storage, batteries or pumped hydro.
Yes.
Then you have to build long duration energy storage because there are weeks sometimes where you have nothing. So you need to have a long duration energy storage. On top, you usually still have a backup power station somewhere. On top, you have to build a much more complex transmission infrastructure. So you're building 5 infrastructures to replace one system. Now you understand the cost problem, the total cost problem. It has to be always more expensive. And number 2, you understand the environmental impact. And actually, those systems are much more prone to problems than one system. The reliability also goes down.
In this state, Queensland, we're going all in, like really seriously all in, very large amounts of money, building solar plants, wind plants and 2 pumped hydro projects. The first one will be somewhere between 8 to 12 billion, and then the next one will be somewhere around 30 billion if it even gets up. You think that Australia will have a problem within a 3-year period with electricity supply. Why?
So it's a problem that Germany is in already. So if Germany had a tough, strong winter last year, the lights would have gone out. But luckily it was a rather warmer winter. Germany, for the first time in in modern history, is an importer of electricity. It used to always export electricity. So Germany, there's this inflection point where reliable capacity from nuclear, coal, gas, hydro, biomass even, right, reliable, dispatchable, is not sufficient to meet that peak power demand. And when you match that point, and that point is, and my understanding, reached in 3-4 years in Queensland, then you have a problem. Then now you rely on wind, solar, plus some sort of not yet built storage system, right? You have not seen how it works, and I'm just warning you, it will happen, and it will not be pleasant, and the cost will go through the roof.
Okay. In Germany, your country suffered or felt the effects of relying so much on Russian gas and found that Vladimir Putin was not a reliable partner that you wanted to rely on. What position has that put Germany in? Because you had shut down your nuclear power stations, I think, but I hear talk that there's consideration whether they be reopened or re-established. What can you explain, please?
So in those 20 years of the so-called Energiewende, energy transition in Germany, right? In those 20 years, basically Germany's installed power capacity from conventional fuels has remained the same. Actually, it's slightly gone up. That's mostly coal and gas. Nuclear, they have turned off completely. It used to be 20 gigawatt. A lot of nuclear is completely off. They have a bit of hydro and a bit of biomass. And now they have overbuilt already wind and solar, double or triple, I think, the other installed capacity. It's become huge. And that's the problem. In the winter, when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, which at night it rarely does, there's no storage even existing, or very small, it's minimal. And you have to understand that the power will have to go off. So first, of course, the government is going to run with demand management, load shedding. They're going to ask you, please don't consume. And that's already happening in Germany. Certain areas already said, listen, consume less during those and those hours. Like South Africa, they have load shedding. They warn you in advance, we will turn off this area for the next 4 hours. So it's not blackout, it's load shedding, or whatever you call it. Yeah? Yep, okay. And that's independent of the Putin issue. Putin basically made the gas expensive and, of course, had issues like some of the supply issues. Putin, in a way, made what had to come faster. But the capacity is not enough. You don't have enough installed capacity. If you turn off your power plants that don't produce electricity, what are you going to do?
France has multiple nuclear power stations. Do they have any energy or electricity problems?
France also has big problems because they have not invested enough. So they have not been keeping up with modernization and all those things. So France has big problems, has had big problems. And there are scientific studies out that by 2030, France is running also short of electricity. Everyone in Europe will, because the same problem that Germany has, everybody has. And everybody somehow says, if I need something, I just import it from somewhere. But now, just recently, Sweden said, no, we don't like that link to Germany, rather not do that. And even, the right-wing parties in France have said, you know what, we don't want to be part of the European connection anymore. These, of course, are dreams as well. We need to have a European connection. But the fact is that the view that you can run a modern society on wind and solar plus some sort of storage system is not doable. And that is pure economic reasons. Energy density, number one, intermittency, number two, and the short lifetime, number three. Those three reasons lead to a huge raw material input in order to build the system and a huge energy input to build the system. You're actually taking so much energy to build your electricity system, it takes so many years to get the energy back you invested in it. It's called EROI, energy return of investment.
Okay. The Australian National University, one of our premier universities in Canberra, recently did what they described as a successful trial where they felt that they plugged electric vehicles back into the grid, only as a trial, only a few of them, maybe 7 or 8 of them, to see if they could supply enough power for a short period of time if there was load shedding. Does that model work, where if there's going to be a brownout, the government can say, we want everyone to stop charging their vehicles and plug their electric vehicles into the grid to cope with this period of time? Does that work in Germany or anywhere else as a fail-safe measure, if you like?
Look, I mean, the idea that a battery system can sort of save you from the problems, it's not correct. Because batteries are only short-duration energy storage, and batteries themselves are not very energy dense, and they need a lot of raw materials, and they, of course, have a disposal issue after a few years. As you know from your phone battery, it dies down after a couple of years. Yeah. So of course, you may be able to cover certain periods, a couple of seconds or minutes, but that's not the problem. The problem is the weeks, right? Yes. And that you cannot cover. Yeah. And what you do, then we all turn off and freeze. So I don't understand the logic. You cannot run a reliable industrial industry on a couple of batteries and cars and EVs trying to charge the system and give you a backup. I mean, for Christ's sake. Yeah?
The opposition nationally here in Australia has said they've come out very strong and they think nuclear is an option to build small modular nuclear power reactors. Give me your take on the as yet apparently untested small modular nuclear power reactors putting them on old coal-fired power station sites. Is that a model that makes sense economically and supplies a base load for a national power grid?
Look, if you look at the total system cost when it comes to electricity, by the way, electricity is only a fraction of total energy. There's a few other things: transportation, heating, industrial energy. But for electricity, the cheapest is always coal. The second is gas. The third is nuclear. Now, nuclear, however, is the most energy efficient. So actually, nuclear fission and also fusion is part of what I call the future of energy, which we need to invest in. So I'm very much pro-nuclear. However, think about it. If the entire world would triple its nuclear capacity, triple in the next 25 years, we would have less nuclear electricity than we had, percentage-wise, than we had 20 years ago. That's how fast the world is growing. So nuclear will be needed. Give me everything you can, but it won't be sufficient. You need thermal power from coal and gas. There's no way around it. For Australia, of course, it's a small country. You're very rich with the cheapest resource, coal. So my recommendation is to use it. I also recommend to invest in nuclear as well for the long term. Of course you should. But I think it will take too long and will be expensive.
The federal government's fear here is if Australia doesn't make the renewable energy transition, that the Europeans, you will punish us with tariffs on all sorts of goods because we haven't met the COP28 agreements. Is that a serious concern for you?
I mean, I've had this discussion in many countries in Southeast Asia and Africa, and I'm always asking the question, are you having another country in Europe determine your energy security and determine what you do? Is that how you run your country? I'm sorry, you cannot. Right? You have to be considered, how do you keep your lights on and how do you keep your economy running? And I don't think that Germany or Europe is a good example when it comes to energy policy. So I don't think that you should be listening to them when it comes to energy policy. That would be a mistake in my view. However, I always point out this is not a political discussion, guys. This is not about politics. It's just pure basis of our existence, our modern industrial life. And energy is at the basis of everything.
Dr. Lars Schernikau, who was in Brisbane last night, he's flown out to Asia now. He spoke in Brisbane yesterday as to why he thinks the energy transition mathematics don't add up.
Your street,
your suburb.
ABC Radio Brisbane.
You're with Steve Austin.
It's 12 to 10, news at 10. If you haven't heard the news, a Brisbane couple from the suburb of Everton Park have been charged with espionage, colloquially known as spying, I think. It's the first ever espionage-related charge since new laws were introduced in 2018. Let me play you briefly what the Australian Federal Police